Okay, we're now looking at the next page, computation of decimals. So in this first example, you're asked to add and subtract some decimals. Now, when adding or subtracting decimals, the main thing is that the decimal points are underneath each other, that the digits in the tens column, the hundreds column, tenths, hundredths and thousandths, that they would all be underneath each other. Now we can see that we've obviously got gaps. So we've got three, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, tenths, hundredths. I want to put a thousandths column there with a zero. You fill in any gaps with zeros, okay? Making sure that these points are underneath each other and that all the digits are underneath each other, which they are. So then you can just add them, okay? I'll just give you a minute to do that. Just pause the video and restart when you're done, okay? Okay, so 9 plus 0 and 0 is 9, 7 plus 5 and 0 is 12, carry the 1. And we've got 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 8 is 18. So we'll carry that over there, the 1 there. We put our decimal point next, and 1 and 3 is 4, plus 2 is 6, and 1 just in this column is 16. So therefore your first answer is 16.829. Now with the second question, 7.234 minus 3.65. Now, making sure that the points are underneath each other, which they are, and filling any gaps with zeros, okay? Now, having a look at this one, making sure that the bottom number is always smaller than the top number. So 4 minus 0 we can do, which is 4. Now 3 take away 5, we can't do that. So we need to make this a 13, and we've borrowed 10 from here, so this cancels out to be a 1. So now we go 13 take away 5 is 8. So here we're trying to do 1 take away 6, and we can't because this 1's too small or the 6 is too big. So we need to borrow 10 from this 6, and we make this now 11. So 11 take away 6 is 5. We put our decimal points and we're left with 6 take away 3, which is 3. Okay, now you can pause the video and try the last one, and when you're done you can restart. So we've got 52.04 take away 37.56. So we can see that all our digits and our points are underneath each other, so we can get started. Now you've got to be really careful when you've got zeros up here when you do your cancelling, okay? So we've got 4 take away 6, so we can't do that. So we make this 14. Now we're taking it here from here. Now we know that, look, you can think of this as being, I suppose, a 10, okay, but you actually don't have 10. So what you want to do, you'll cross this off to a 9, but you've got to cross this off again and make this cross this off again and make this a 1. So whenever you're crossing out a 0 and making it a 9, you're really then crossing out another number. You need to cross out another number because 9 isn't less than 0, okay? So you need to cross that out, go 1 less than what you'd think. I suppose you'd almost think of it as 10, but you go 1 less than that, which is 9, but you need to cross out again and change this to a 1, okay? So we've got 14 take away 6 is 8, 9 take away 5 is 4, we put our decimal points. Now 1 take away 7 we can't do, so we cross out our 5 and make it a 4. This becomes 11 take away 7 is 4, and 4 take away 3 is 14. And so that's our answer to that question. Okay, you might pause the video and attempt these 3 questions over here on your own, okay? Actually, what I might do, I've changed my mind, I'm going to continue with this video down here. Just going to do the whole of this left-hand column. You can go through it, and then you can do this other your turn for homework yourself, okay? And then we can go through the other column in class, or I'll create another video. Our first question, multiplying decimals by powers of 10. Here are the rules. To multiply a decimal number by a power of 10, now when you multiply something by 10, you're making it 10 times bigger. So if you move the decimal place 1 place to the right, then each of the place values is actually getting 10 times bigger. So what you do when you're multiplying a decimal number by 10, you move the decimal point 1 place to the right, which makes the number bigger for each 0 in the power of 10. So if you're multiplying by 10, you move the decimal point 1 place to the right. If you're multiplying by, say, 100, you'd move the decimal place 2 points to the right. And if you're multiplying by 1,000, you move the decimal place 3 points to the right. And what you'll do, sometimes you'll be jumping places to the right and there aren't enough digits, so you will just add some extra zeros. So in my first question, I've got 0.55 times 10. So I look at where my decimal point is, and it's before the 5. And so what I need to do is move this decimal point 1 place to the right. So instead of the decimal point being before that first 5, it's now between the two 5s. And my answer will be that my decimal points move from there before that 5 to in between the two 5s. So my answer is 5.5. Now in my second question, my decimal point is here. It starts there. And I'm timesing it by 100, so I move it 2 places to the right. So it starts here and I go 1, 2. So this is where my decimal point ends, okay? So because I don't have enough digits here, I have to put a 0 in here. So my answer becomes 1,730. Now in my third question here, I'm timesing this number here by 1,000. My decimal point is there, that's where you start from. And I have to jump 1, 2, 3 places to the right. So my answer ends up being 175, and I end up with a point at the end. Now, we never write whole numbers with points on the end, so we just write 175. So if your decimal point ends on the end, you don't need it because every whole number has a decimal point on the end. So we don't need to put it. It started there before the 1, and we jumped 1, 2, 3, and it ended up at the end. So it becomes a whole number, which is 175. Now, when you're dividing decimals by powers of 10, we do the opposite. Instead of, see, when you're dividing by 10, you're making it smaller. So like we're starting here with 76, and when we divide it by 10, if we move our decimal place back once, we'll end up with 7.6, which is 10 times smaller. So when you're dividing numbers by 10 or 100 or 1,000, you need to move the decimal point back to the left. If you're dividing by 10, you move the decimal point back once, 1 place. If you're dividing by 100, you move the decimal point back 2 places. If you're dividing by 1,000, you move the decimal point back 3 places. And if you don't have enough digits, you fill in any gaps with zeros. So let's look at the first question. 76.2. Now, my decimal point starts there, and I need to be moving it back 1 place. So it starts there, moves back 1 place, and I end up with my answer being 7.62. In this question here, my point is there. So I move back 2 places, 1, 2. And my answer ends up being, my point will end up being between the 9 and the 8, so I get 9.876. And with my last one, I've got 52.3. My point starts here and I've got to move it back 3 places. So I go 1, 2, 3, and that's where my new point is. So I need to fill in this gap with a 0. Now, girls, we always have zeros in front of points or a number. Otherwise, you don't see the point. So the answer becomes 0.0523. Okay? All right. You can probably try these now, or you can continue with the video and turn over the page. Now, the next question is multiplying decimals. Now, when we multiply decimals, we just multiply normally, ignoring the decimal point. So I'm just going to write 73 times 4. So we would just multiply that normally, and we go 73 times, and on the next row we write 4. So we go 4 times 3 is 12, put the 2 there, carry the 1. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 1 is 29. So I write 292. Now, when I write my answer, I'll just put 292, but I'm not finished. I have to count how many decimal points are in the question. Now, this says 7.3 times 4, so I've got a point there. There is only 1 digit after the decimal point in the question. So in my answer, I have to have 1 digit after the decimal point. So I put my point there, 29.2. Now, girls, what you can do is you can say this is roughly 7 times 4. So my answer should be about 28. So if I put the decimal point there, my answer is 29.2. So that makes sense. If I put my decimal point on the end, it's going to be 292, and that's just too big. So the answer needs to be somewhere near 28. Now with this next question here, we're doing 0.05 times 3.1. Now, there's two numbers here and just one there. Zeros at the front don't count. So I'm just going to do 31 times 5. And I'm going to get 5 times 1 is 5. So what you do, you ignore all decimal points and just multiply them like they were normal numbers. So you do 31 times 5, because 005 is the same as 5. So we go 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, so my answer here is 155. Now what I do, I count how many decimal places there are in the question. Now I've got 2 numbers after the decimal point here and 1 number after the decimal point there, which is 3 digits after the point. So in my answer, I need 1, 2, 3 digits after the point. So I put the point there so that I've got 1, 2, 3 digits after the point. So my answer ends up being 0.155. Now we'll look at the last question there. You just multiply it like it's 64 times 12, okay? Don't worry about the decimal points yet, okay? So we're doing 64 times 12. So first we do 2 times 4 and then 2 times 6. So 2 times 4 is 8 and 2 times 6 is 12. So we write 12. And then now we need to put a 0 because we're working here from the tens column. So then we go 1 times 4 is 4 and 1 times 6 is 6. Now that we're done, we add these two columns to get like these 2 rows together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 2 plus 4 is 6 and 1 plus 6 is 7. So I write here 768. Now I have to decide where to put the decimal point. Now I've got 1, 2 digits after the point. So in my answer, I need 1, 2 digits after the point. So I end up with 7.68. Now the other way you can look at this, it's a little bit bigger than 6 times 1. 6 times 1 is 6, so the answer needs to be around 6. 7.68 is just a little bit bigger than 6. Like you wouldn't put the point there and make it 76.8 because that just wouldn't make sense, okay? So the answer is 7.68. Okay, now in the next question we're doing 19.2 divided by 3. Now that is the same as going 3. How many times does 3 go into 19.2? So we set our question out like that. So we go 3 into 1 doesn't go. So then it becomes 3 into 19. Now 3 6s are 18, so it goes 6 times. And we've got a remainder of 1 because 3 times 6 is 18. And we're trying to see how many times 3 goes into 19. So it's 18, so we've got remainder 1. We put the decimal point above the point here. And 3 goes into 12 4 times. So the answer here is 6.4. Now looking at the next question. 67.33 divided by 5. We're really seeing how many times does 5 go into 67.33. So we're just going to do the same as what we did up here. 5 goes into 6, yes it does, once, with 1 remainder. 5 into 17, so counting up by 5s, we've got 5, 10, 15. So that's 3 times with a remainder of 2. So I've come up to the point now, so I put the point up here. So 5 into 23, so we've got 5, 10, 15, 20. So it goes 4 times with a remainder of 3. Again, 5 into 33, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. That's 6 with a remainder of 3 again. Now, because I've got a remainder of 3 and nothing else here, 67.33 is the same as 67.330. So I just add another 0 on the end of here. And I go 5 goes into 30, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 6 times. So my answer therefore is 13.466. Okay. Now, we're looking at dividing decimals by decimals. Now, if you look up here, we were dividing decimals by whole numbers. Now, what we can do, we're going to change this question. We know how to divide decimals by whole numbers, but not decimals by decimals. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the decimal point in this second number so that it is a whole number. So I'm going to move this point 1 place to the right there. And if I move this one place to the right, I have to move this one place to the right. So instead of 14.42 divided by 0.7, it's going to be, the decimal points move 1 place to the right, it's going to be 144.2 divided by, this decimal place is moved from there to after the 7, So I've got 144.2 divided by 7 point, which just means 7. So now my question is 7 into 144.2. Now we know how to do whole numbers into decimals. So 7 into 1 won't go. So 7 into 14 goes twice. Okay? 7, does it go into 4? No, it doesn't. So you put a 0 and we're up to the point. So we've got to carry that remainder, that 4 over here. We don't just lose it. So again, 7 into 1 doesn't go. 7 into 14 goes twice. 7 doesn't go into 4, so I'll put a 0, decimal point, but this 4 needs to be carried over here. 7 into 42, well, 7 6 is 42, so my answer is 6 there, and therefore I've got 20.6. Now with this question, I've got 3.3 divided by 0.03. Now, I need to move my decimal point so that I've got a whole number. I need to be dividing by whole numbers, so I'll need to move it once, twice. So because I moved this one twice, I need to move this one twice. So I go once, twice. Now I've got to fill in that gap with a 0. And the question becomes 330, because my points ended up at the end, divided by divided by 3. So I had, I'm just going to write this a bit bigger. I had 3.30 divided by 0.03. I moved this one once, twice, so my point ends up here. So I moved this one once, twice. So my point ends up there. So I ended up with 330 divided by 3. So I just go 3 into 330. And I go 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once, and 3 goes into 0. Well, it doesn't go into 0, so the answer is 0. So therefore, my answer to this question is 110. Okay, now you can try all this other column on your own a bit later. I'm just going to finish the booklet off by going over the page, okay? Now, this last question here, sometimes you'll get these questions with calculator, okay, but I'm going to do these without a calculator. Remembering calculating decimals of quantities, when you see the word of, it means times most of the time anyway. So if you want 0.7 of 4 kilograms, that question becomes 0.7 times 4. So remembering when we multiply decimals by other decimals or decimals by numbers, we just ignore the decimals, and this question becomes 7 times 4, which is 28. Now, if we look at the question, there's 1 digit after the decimal point. So in the answer, I need 1 digit after the decimal point. So my answer to this question is going to be 2.8. Now, remembering that 0.7 is less than 1 whole, like 0.5 is a half. So this has to be a little bit bigger than a half of 4. Like a half of 4 is 2. So 0.7 of 4 will be bigger than 2, and our answer is 2.8. Okay? And looking at this last one, 0.04 times 0.2, just do 4 times 2 first, because remember, zeros at the beginning don't matter. Now 4 times 2 is 8. So our answer is 8, but the problem here is that I need 1, 2, 3 digits after the decimal point. Now this is actually, I'm going to show you this another way in a minute. So I want 3 digits after the decimal point. This is a little bit tricky. I've got 8. At the moment the point's here. So I go back 1, 2, 3. I want 3 digits. And my answer, now I've got 3 digits. My answer is 0.008 litres. Now, there is an easier way to do this. Because this quantity was so small, I'm going to change the question to be, instead of find 0.04 of 0.2 litres, I'm going to change it and make the 0.2 litres into smaller units, and I'm going to make it 0.04 of, now 0.2 litres, we want to times that by 1,000. So if I move this 3 places, it's the same as 0.04 of 200 mils. Okay, now look, you can leave the answer as that. Another way is to change the 0.2 litres into 200 mils. So when we do that, we're just going to do 200 times 0.04. Now remember, just ignore the zeros in front here and just do 200 times 4. And if you do that, you'll get 800. So I've got 800 as this answer, but I've got 2 decimal places in the question. So I need to put 2 decimal places in my answer. So I'm going to end up with 2 digits after the decimal point. My answer is going to be 8 mils. Now look, girls, this is a pretty tricky question. This sort of question, you might be asked to do it on your calculator, and you just go 0.04 times 0.2 litres, okay? All right, girls, you can stop the video now. I'd really like you to do all of these things that say your turn. So please finish this booklet off doing all these pages with your turn, and so you've got 2.5 pages to look at there, okay? Thank you.